You ever been so stunned by the audacity of strangers that your brain just short-circuits for a second? I mean, there I was, halfway into buckling my seatbelt, when these two perfectly coiffed, two loud 7 a.m. women hovered over me like vultures, and one of them actually snapped her fingers in my face. "Excuse me," the older one said with the kind of condescension that makes your teeth itch. "That's our seat. Window and middle. You need to move." Just like that. No, please. No checking their tickets. Just pure Karen energy at 38,000 feet before we'd even left the ground. I'm not new to flying. I do cross-country trips for work a few times a month quietly, respectfully, like most adults who understand what assigned seating means. This particular flight was from Phoenix to Boston long haul, packed to capacity, middle of summer, and people were already irritated just trying to find overhead bin space. I had boarded early, got to my window seat in row 22, took out my book, and was settling in when the Karen sisters arrived, blonde highlights, floral print cardigans, wheeling matching pink suitcases like they were headed to a brunch instead of a crowded flight. It all started when the older one, let's call her Deborah, blocked the aisle and pointed down at me like she was casting a spell. "He's in our seat," she said, turning to her younger clone who immediately nodded like a trained backup singer. I blinked. "Oh, no," I said calmly, already holding out my boarding pass. 22A. Window. That's me. Deborah rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd injure herself. No. We specifically asked for these seats at the counter. I don't care what that says here in my seat. Now let me pause to say I was raised to be polite, but not to let people walk all over me. Still, I figured maybe this was just a mistake, a mix-up. Maybe she meant another row. I stayed seated, didn't escalate. But then the younger one, Jessica, we'll call her, leaned in like she was sharing a secret and said, "Can't you just be nice and switch to the aisle? We want to sit together." And my sister gets very claustrophobic. The way she said very, like it was a medical condition. I damn near laughed. But I didn't. I just looked up at them and repeated, "This is the seat I was assigned. You can ask the flight attendant if you want, but I'm not moving." That's when the vibe shifted. Deborah turned mean. Not just annoying mean. She snorted, turned to Jessica, and said loudly enough for the whole cabin to hear, "Unbelievable. These people are always so difficult. These people." Now, I don't know exactly what she meant by that, but the way her eyes scanned me up and down with my dark curly hair, olive skin, and plain blue t-shirt, I had a few guesses. I kept my cool, but something inside me hardened. I knew right then this was more than just about a seat. This was entitlement wrapped in passive-aggressive privilege, and I wasn't about to play along. They huffed and puffed and planted themselves in the middle and aisle seats beside me, but not before Deborah bumped me with her tote bag and muttered, "Rude." I didn't respond. I just went back to my book, but I could feel the tension radiating off them like bad perfume. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, just before takeoff, Jessica pressed the call button. Flight attendant walks over, tall guy, probably in his 30s, with that pleasant but tired airline smile. "Everything okay here?" Jessica goes into full theater mode. "Hi. Sorry to bother you, but there's been a little mistake. This gentleman's in our seat, and he's refusing to move. We need to be next to each other, obviously, and he's being really uncooperative." I hadn't said a word. I held up my pass again. 22A. Window. I boarded early. The flight attendant took both boarding passes and checked them against his list. He gave them that customer service smile, tight-lipped and polite, but unmistakably annoyed. "Ladies, your seats are actually 26B and C, toward the back." Jessica's face froze. Deborah wasn't having it. "Well, we asked the gate agent to change them." The attendant nodded. "That may be, ma'am, but unless the change is printed on the ticket, the assignment doesn't hold. This gentleman is correctly seated." I thought that'd be the end of it. It should have been the end. But Karen energy doesn't quit, it doubles down. Deborah crossed her arms and said, "I'm not moving. We're already here. If he wants to sit alone, he can go to 26A. Jessica followed up with, "It's just a seat. Why is he being so difficult?" "Oh, hell no." I leaned forward, calm but clear. "You're squatting in someone else's seat. You're delaying takeoff. And now you're making this the entire cabin's problem. This isn't about the seat, it's about you thinking the rules don't apply to you." I'm done being quiet about it. Now here's where the twist came in. Remember that flight attendant? Turns out, he wasn't just a flight attendant. He was the lead flight attendant and also a combat vet, something I only learned later. He squared his shoulders, took a breath, and suddenly his voice shifted. Ma'am, if you do not move to your assigned seats, you'll be removed from this flight. This is not a negotiation. Deborah tried one more time. We paid for priority, and your priority seats are 26B and C. He cut in, now less polite. Last warning. There was a beat of silence. You could hear people behind us unbuckling, sensing drama. Someone whispered, "Let's go," like it was a reality show. Jessica stood up first, face flushed. Deborah followed, muttering something about writing a complaint and legal action, which made the guy in 23C chuckle audibly. They stormed off to the back without another word. But here's the best part. About 10 minutes into the flight, after we were airborne, that same attendant returned to my row. "Hey," he said, crouching beside me so only I could hear. "Thanks for keeping your cool. You want a drink? On us. Also, if anyone gives you trouble again, just ask for me, Derek." I smiled, nodded. "Thanks, man. Appreciate it." But it wasn't over just yet. Midway through the flight, I got up to stretch and walk toward the back. That's when I saw Deborah and Jessica sitting 2 rows apart, not next to each other. Apparently, when they went back, their original seats were already taken, so they had to split up after all that drama. The irony was almost too perfect. But justice? Justice came when we landed. The flight was running behind schedule, so the crew made an announcement that people with tight connections could exit first. That included me. As I gathered my things, I passed the Karen sisters in row 28 now, fuming, and one of them muttered something I won't repeat. But Derek saw the whole thing, stepped in front of me like a bodyguard. "You two have said enough," he said, loud enough for 3 rows to hear. "Let the man through." And I did, with a smile, with dignity, with every ounce of grace they didn't deserve. Now, every time I board a plane, I think of that day, of how it all could have gone so differently if I'd let them steamroll me. But I didn't. I stood my ground. And a whole cabin of tired, decent people got to see entitlement loot for once. Makes you wonder, though, what is it that makes some people think the world owes them more than everyone else? And when they finally get told now we do, they fall apart like it's some kind of injustice. Maybe it's time we all start standing our ground a little more. Quietly, firmly, like row 22A. What would you have done if you were in my seat? Have you ever had a Karen at 30,000 feet moment? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories where karma comes cruising in at altitude.